The water on the roof of the Days Inn in St. Augustine, Florida, was meant for showers, sinks, and laundry. It sat high above the building in sealed metal tanks, invisible to the guests below, feeding through pipes and faucets without a second thought. The tanks were locked, hidden behind rooftop access doors, and rarely opened except by maintenance. No one staying at the hotel ever thought about them. No one imagined they could be dangerous. But in late March of 2014, one of those tanks became a coffin. Inside, floating in the cold, stale water, was the body of a woman, 39 years old, fully clothed, and for the people who knew her, the discovery was not only shocking but impossible to accept. Her name was Lamanda Heron. She wasn't from Florida. She was from Georgia, a state away, but in some ways a world apart. Friends described her as warm and lively, the kind of person who could break the ice in a room without trying. She had an easy laugh, a quick smile, and a way of making strangers feel like old friends. She had children she loved fiercely. But by the start of 2014, something about Lamanda had changed. People close to her noticed it. She seemed nervous, distracted, often lost in thought. And then she began saying things that worried them, things about being watched, followed. It wasn't a jealous ex she claimed to fear, not police, not bill collectors. She said she was being stalked by demons. She used the word without hesitation, without humor, without any indication that she meant it metaphorically. She told people they were after her, that they lurked in shadows, that she could feel them even when she couldn't see them. Some friends wondered if she was having a mental health crisis. Others thought maybe she was using drugs, but Lamanda denied both. This wasn't stress or hallucination, she insisted. This was real. In March, she left Georgia for Florida. She didn't announce it as a vacation. She didn't tell anyone she had business there. She just said she needed to get away. St. Augustine was her destination, a city known for its cobblestone streets, its Spanish colonial architecture, its centuries-old fort, and its proximity to the ocean. Tourists walked beneath centuries-old walls. Street musicians played on corners. Carriages clattered over stone. But the hotel Lamanda checked into wasn't in the postcard-perfect historic district. It was on a busy commercial strip where chain motels, fast food restaurants, and gas stations competed for the eye of passing drivers. The Days Inn was a functional place, built for convenience, not charm. On March 24th, Lamanda checked in under her own name. Her room was plain, beige walls, a green and brown patterned bedspread, a small desk under a lamp. She brought few belongings. To her, this was more a hiding place than a home away from home. In the days that followed, staff and guests saw her coming and going. Sometimes she appeared jumpy, glancing over her shoulder as if someone might be following her. At night, she walked the parking lot alone, pacing under the glow of the streetlights. She didn't appear drunk or high, just uneasy, like a person waiting for something she didn't want to arrive. Then one day she was gone. Her room was empty. There was no suitcase, no purse, nothing to indicate where she might have gone. She hadn't checked out, hadn't spoken to the front desk. For a time, no one reported her missing. In a hotel, people come and go without notice. But over the next several days, guests began to complain about the water. Some said the pressure was low. Others said the water from the taps looked strange, cloudy, with a brownish tint. Maintenance was called to check the rooftop tanks. Getting to the tanks wasn't simple. You had to unlock the door to the roof, walk across part of it, and climb a narrow ladder to the top of the cylindrical metal structures. Then, you had to lift a heavy hatch. On that day, when the maintenance worker pulled the lid open on one of the tanks, he froze. The water was not clear. Something pale floated just beneath the surface. As his eyes adjusted, he realized it was a woman's body, fully clothed, face down. The police arrived quickly. They taped off the area, sealing the rooftop and the stairwell. They began photographing everything: the ladder, the hatch, the surrounding roof. Detectives knew immediately that this case would be difficult. Water is merciless on evidence. It washes away DNA, erases fingerprints, softens bruises until they're hard to read. And in this case, there was the question of access. Few people had keys to the roof door, and fewer still would think to look inside the tanks. The autopsy revealed no broken bones, no stab wounds, no bullet injuries. Toxicology showed no significant drugs or alcohol. The cause of death was drowning. That finding narrowed nothing. If she had climbed in herself, the result would be the same. If someone had forced her in alive, the same. If someone had killed her elsewhere and dumped her body inside, water would still have entered her lungs if she wasn't yet gone. And so the theories began. The first theory was suicide. Perhaps she climbed to the roof alone, opened the hatch, and lowered herself into the tank with the intention of ending her life. But this seemed strange to her family. They said Lamanda was afraid of something out there, not of herself. She had children she loved, and the method, climbing into a water tank, was unusual, physically difficult, and terrifying to imagine. The second theory was homicide. Someone else could have led her to the roof, perhaps at knife point, forced her up the ladder, and made her enter the tank. But there were no defensive wounds, no clear sign of a struggle. The third theory was concealment. Perhaps she was killed somewhere else, and the tank was used to hide her body. This posed its own problems. The hatch was heavy. Lifting a dead weight up a ladder and into the tank was awkward and risky. Someone could have been seen. Her family never accepted the first theory. They believed someone used her fear against her. And the parallels to another case, Elisa Lam, the Canadian tourist, found in a rooftop tank at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles just a year earlier, only deepened the mystery. In both cases, the woman had been acting strangely before disappearing. In both cases, there was no clear explanation for how she ended up in a locked, elevated water tank. In both, the cause of death was drowning. In Lamanda's case, there was no elevator surveillance video to analyze, no timeline built from security cameras, only fragments from witnesses, employees, and the haunting discovery above the roofline. Without new evidence, the case stalled. Police left it open but inactive. The hotel drained and cleaned the tanks, changed the locks, and went back to business. But for the people who'd been there, it lingered. Some guests swore the water tasted metallic for weeks. For her family, it was worse, a wound with no closure. Today, St. Augustine's streets are full of tourists who've never heard her name. They browse shops, take photos by the fort, and drink coffee under the shade of palm trees. They don't know that, in 2014, just a few blocks away, a woman died in a way no one can explain, in the dark water above a modest hotel. And unless someone speaks, the truth about Lamanda's last moments will remain sealed, locked away as tightly as the hatch that once covered her. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.